Hi, so today I'm going to go into Falloffs and how useful they can be and just how many different things they can do. I think this will be good because you can see just how many different uses Falloffs have, but also some of like the fundamental ways that Cavalry works and the various things that you can connect one behavior to, or how many things a Falloff can affect. I think this will be really useful just to dig into and slow down a bit. Start by saying there is some good documentation you can read, as well as a quick tutorial by the guys at Cavalry, and also a scene you can download here. So to get you started, I should say that I haven't really done anything here to create this scene. You can create this straight away if you just go up to demo scenes and then come down to text. There is a scene here called Falloff. This will create a new scene in your assets window, and yeah, it will just build you your first Falloff. So quite literally in this other scene, all I did was just move the Falloff and loop that animation. If you wanted to do that, just select the Falloff in the scene window. I'm going to change its position to -500. Maybe that's too much, -300. Add a keyframe here on the position.x. and then move the timeline a bit, and we're just going to edit position.x to 300. That will automatically create a new keyframe here. And if I just move a few more frames, I'm going to double up that last keyframe just so that there's no movement here. Some of you might have this on already, but I tend to work with it on quite a lot of the time. But there's a button down here at the bottom right called the transform tool, so I'm just going to turn that on so I can select all of these keyframes. And what that means is I can click and drag these all in one go, or I can stretch out this animation nicely in a relative way. But also, yep, I can now right click this and there's an option here, loop after, so I'm going to go for looping. You don't actually have to have the transform tool on to right click and do that. It's just that I like the transform tool because without it I can't stretch the animation in a way that I would like to. Anyway, so you can press play and you can see that you've just got this nice quick animation of the word Falloff bouncing about. A good place to start would be deconstructing this and showing you how it's built, because it's only 3 layers, which is super simple, but it might not be immediately apparent as to how you do that yourself. So let's just dig into it in a brand new composition, because I think it'll be useful to build this yourselves. So we're going to start with a text shape. I'm just going to make the alignment center and the vertical alignment center, and I'll increase the size. With the text shape loaded into the attribute editor, I'm going to go to deformers. I'm going to click on the plus, and in the list I'm going to look for submesh, which is down the bottom here for me. It might depend on the size of your screen, I guess, where that appears, and it's created a submesh in the scene window. I'm going to click and drag the submesh, and I'm going to place it onto the text shape just so it's a child of the text shape. This is just to keep the scene window a bit tidier, and we can collapse that layer later if we need to. Organization tends to help a lot when you start filling up this window full of layers. The only thing missing now is the Falloff, so I'm going to open the submesh in the attribute editor. I'm going to go to the Falloffs tab, add Falloff, and this will create a Falloff. I'm also going to drag this underneath the submesh too, and we've got a Falloff here, but clearly it's not doing anything because we haven't added any values to anything on the submesh yet. So if you load your submesh into the attribute editor, select behavior, when you edit say position Y or position X, you'll see that the characters in the viewport move. You can also edit things like rotation and scale. Now if you select the Falloff and move it, you can see that the characters animate based on the attributes you changed on the submesh. You might not want to animate on a per character basis. You might want to do it on a word basis. So I guess if I was to go back to the text shape and I'll just type Cavalry is awesome, mind my spelling, we'll just lower the size of that. What we can do is we can animate this on a per word basis. So open the submesh, go to level mode, and we'll change this to word. And when you move the Falloff now, this will animate per word. If you want to learn more about the submesh, you can find that in the docs as well. It's basically going to tell you exactly what a submesh is, and it's just a hierarchy of shapes. So that is what a Falloff can do on a submesh. You should note that this can also be applied if I just unparent the submesh here. going to keep these. We can also apply it to shapes. So if I was to get a rectangle, duplicate it, and then apply this submesh to the duplicator as a deformer, and then we move the fall off, you can see that you can also edit your duplicated shapes, which is pretty cool. Right, so now I'm going to show you what you can do with a duplicator on a behavior. So let's start by building a quick scene. I'm going to alt click the line tool to create a basic line. I'm going to change the length of this line to 500. And with the basic line selected, I'm going to click on the duplicator at the top in the shelf here, which is going to duplicate the line. I'm going to change the X count to 1, Y to 30, and then we'll just increase the height to about 550, just to create a bunch of lines. Select the duplicator to load it into the attribute editor if you haven't already. Go to the deformers tab, and then we will go to something like the oscillator, and you can see that the oscillator is deforming all of these lines now. On the oscillator, I'm just going to make this a bit more impactful, so I'm going to change it to -50 on the minimum, and then on the maximum 50 as well, just so it's a bit more in your face what's happening. I'm going to change the timescale to 0.25 as well, just to slow it down a bit. If you press play, you can see what the oscillator is doing to our duplicator now, and you can see that it's affecting the entire shape. Let's go onto the oscillator in the attribute editor and go to the Falloff tab. Then we're going to right click and add Falloff. You can immediately see now that the oscillator is only affecting the duplicated shape within the confines of the Falloff. So if we just pause it, we can click and drag this Falloff around the viewport, and you can see, yeah, we're being very specific about which parts of the shape that we want to deform. The Falloff doesn't even have to just be a circle either. On the Falloff in the attribute editor, you can change the shape type to linear, and what this means is that it will do it in a straight line or a linear pattern across your shape. This also works if you rotate the Falloff now. Pretty cool effect, and I'll quickly show you in another composition that I've sort of pre-set up. Similar setup to the duplicator you saw a minute ago, but there is also on the Falloff, there is a shape type attribute, so I can change this to shape. You'll see that just removes any effect that we've got on at the moment. But if I was to create, say, a star, I'm going to increase the size of this star and then go to the Falloff. On the shape type, there's now an input shapes attribute. I'm just going to drag that star onto the input shape. I'm going to hide the star in the scene window, and you can see that the Falloff is affecting the duplicator in the shape of a star. So if we animate the star and rotate it, pretty cool. Now, this doesn't have to be limited to just one shape. You can actually add as many Falloffs as you like. So if I was to go back onto the submesh, go to the Falloffs tab, and then add another Falloff, we've now got Falloff 2, which means we can affect a different area of the submesh. This doesn't need to be limited to the position and rotation of things either. So for example, I'm just going to move the star back to 0. And we will increase the scale on this block for a second. We can also affect things like the fill color on a shape. So if I was to go onto the submesh in the attribute editor, go to the fill tab, and then at the bottom we've got something called fill override. So I'm going to click the plus here, and I'm just going to add a color material override. I'm going to open up the color material override in the attribute editor, and I'm going to change this color to like red, and you can see that that's affected everything in that submesh. But if we go to the Falloffs tab, there's no Falloff here. We can click and drag our existing Falloff from the scene window onto the attribute editor Falloff. And there we go. You can see that we're now affecting just specific shapes within our submesh. So I'll show you something else as well. I'm just going to change this gray color to something else. I'm going to go to the submesh, fill. I'm going to click on replace fill. I'm just going to change this to a blue so that it stands out and you can see what we're about to do. Back on the Falloff, if you load that into the attribute editor, there is also something called a Falloff graph. This allows you to basically affect the curve of the affected shapes within the submesh. So if we look at the graph, I think the easiest way to explain it is that the top is 100% affected and the bottom is 0% affected. So if we were to switch it to one of these, so the bell curve, we've now created like a ring around the star, so a stroke of that shape. You can, in here, you can double click to create new points with Behaviours. This just means that you can edit it exactly as you want and have as little or as much effect as you want, and just make it really specific or precise as you like. Alright, I'm going to leave it there for today. I think this is just a super useful thing, just for not just for learning about Falloffs, but for learning just about experimenting and trying to connect one behavior or one utility to multiple deformers, and knowing that, say, on this submesh I've got this falloff, but then that falloff can also be used on the color material override and other deformers and shapes as you see fit. It's reusing and recycling nodes that is like just one of the key fundamentals to making dynamic work. So that's me for today. As I say, it was just a bit more of a relaxed tutorial, not really trying to teach you how to make a specific thing, but just trying to teach you how to use various utilities within Cavalry, and just that fundamental of connecting one thing to another, recycling, I think is really important. So goodbye and happy animating. Peace. I know nothing. I don't mind. I know nothing.